Hi, and welcome to College Football on Air. I'm your host, Carl Mogline. Today we'll be talking about many college football topics. We'll be talking about the past week's games, Alabama losing to Texas A&M, that is the biggest one, the current BCS and AP rankings, my personal top 10, and next week's matchups, and Louisiana Tech. I really like that team, and I'll tell you more about that later. And to finish up, we'll talk about the Heisman. But to start off, I want to say something about this. The missing Texas A&M player, receiver Thomas Johnson, was found overnight and is safe. I and many college football fans across the country are so happy to hear this news. He was found in his hometown of Dallas, unharmed, but no further details have been given. So starting our show tonight. So Alabama's lost to Texas A&M. It was huge, mainly because Alabama was number 1. Texas A&M was 15. Texas A&M had lost twice already, although both those losses were to Florida and LSU, which are good teams. But I think that it's really interesting how quickly Johnny Manziel went from being good to being great. It's like, I don't know, it bugs me. That's not the point of this. I think this Texas A&M team, really my favorite part of this team is their defense is way better than people think. Nobody knows how good their defense is. It's kind of funny. Next, Syracuse beat Louisville to end Louisville's undefeated season, kind of proving the Big East still sucks. Notre Dame beat Boston College in a game that I think was a little too close for a team that's ranked number 3 in the country. The Ducks of Oregon took down Cal. No real huge issues there. Kind of iffy in the first half, but by the second half, I mean, you look at the final score, it looked like it was a blowout, and it was, so you can't really, argue the methods, because if they win by that much. And finally, the Kansas State Wildcats beat the TCU Horned Frogs. Not the closest game. I think TCU definitely would have liked a closer game, but K-State's a good team. It really is. So, just to go on. Actually, we're going to go right to break. But after this, I will be telling you about the current BCS and AP rankings and my personal top 10. Hello, and welcome back to College Football on Air. I'm still Carl Mugline, shockingly, I know. The current BCS and AP standings. These are a little different. They are pretty similar, though. The big thing is the computers do change the rankings, and also Ohio State, who is 10-0, is ineligible for postseason play, and therefore ineligible for the BCS ranking. So Oregon tops the AP poll with 45 of the 60 votes. Kansas State is 14, and only one voter thinking Notre Dame is the top team. Really shows Oregon's dominance on the field recently. The USA Today also had the same rankings with the same first place votes, which I find very shockingly amazing. And then with the BCS, though, Kansas State is above of Oregon. It's because of the computers. The computers don't like Oregon. They should like them more after they play Stanford. The computer that has Oregon ranked the lowest, the computer that ranks Oregon the lowest has them like 7. No, has them 5. Excuse me. And Stanford is at 7. So if we beat them, that should easily put us up to at least 3rd, which will pass us over Kansas State because our lead in the polls is much larger. Alabama is 4 in the AP poll, while it is also 4 in the BCS poll, mainly because of computer strength. Following that is Georgia, 5 both polls. There's kind of a difference. Most of the teams are just moved 1 back in this polls from the AP, from the BCS, because Ohio State is ineligible. So Ohio State is 6th in the AP, but cannot, receive votes in the BCS. So it makes sense. But when you look down, Florida is 7 in the AP, 6. LSU the same way. The big difference is that Florida State, who's 10 or would be 9 without Ohio State, is 1 rank above, and South Carolina is 2 ranks below after getting jumped by Clemson. It shows how South Carolina really is playing off that SEC hype, you could say. My personal opinion on that, I think the SEC needs to play stronger non-conference games because I think their teams are playing such weak opponents now. They built up this reputation, and now they're using it. There's no need to play big teams. They can play FCS teams, and they can still make the postseason easy, win national championships. I really like what LSU did last year by playing Oregon because it showed they were a good team at the start. Alabama, who have they beaten other than LSU the past 2 years? Tell me. They lost in A&M, so you can't say they've beaten any good teams, really, except for a good Arkansas team a couple years ago. It really just, I really kind of get annoyed by that, but that's just me. A team that I'd like to talk about is Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech is ranked 19th in the AP, 20th in the BCS. If they are ranked 16th or higher and above one of the conference champions, aka Louisville or Nebraska or Wisconsin, depending on who wins those conferences, they can actually make a BCS bowl. And this is a team that lost Texas A&M on a 2-point conversion. A team that just beat Alabama. So if this really isn't true, but if you say a team that beats this team could beat this team, Louisiana Tech could beat Alabama. They could be a really strong team. And I love Colby Cameron so much. He is an incredible passer. He has the longest streak of passes without getting intercepted at like 400 some passes. It's insane. I do not understand how he does that. Okay, my personal top 10. I have Oregon at 1. Of course, I'm a little biased being from Oregon, but I love their offense. I just don't see how you don't pick them 1 when they have so much speed and so many points, and their defense is better than it's ever been. Their offense is better than it's ever been with Chip Kelly. I just don't see them being stopped by a team like Kansas State or Notre Dame or even Bama. Kansas State is 2. Hard not to beat them. I put Ohio State 3 just because I think they're 10-0. I think they're better than Notre Dame, who's not a very good team. And then I put Notre Dame 4, Bama 5, Georgia takes the 6th. Bama over Georgia, that was hard, but you can't count on the Georgia quarterback, which really hurts because I like the Georgia Bulldogs, and I like multiple offensive and defensive players, but their quarterback kind of sinks. So, Florida State, I put above Florida at 7. That's kind of controversial. Mainly because I think Florida State had one bad half. You play one bad half of football and you're that low. I think they should be 7. Florida 8, which should be a good matchup in a couple weeks. Florida State and Florida. LSU 9. And closing out my top 10, I have South Carolina. That's lower than a lot of people, but I really don't like that team much. So, what are you going to do? Hello, we're back on College Football on Air. I am Carl Mogline, and we're going to talk about next week's games now. There's not many good ones. It's really a kind of an off week as we're preparing for those last season stretches. There are 3 games that I'm calling good games, if you will. Good teams playing good teams. So, my first one is one of the bigger ones. UCLA versus USC. I love this UCLA team. Just how something about them. Jonathan Franklin is an incredible rusher. Brett Hurdley is leading this team as a freshman. You look at Pac-12 quarterbacks who are freshmen, they're probably better than the sophomores or juniors. Seniors, you can't say they're better than the seniors with Matt Barkley there, but you gotta think that this UCLA team could easily top this USC team, making them the best in LA for the first time in a long time. I really like UCLA in this game. And, I mean, it will be close, but just if you look at UCLA, they've got a better kicker as well, which probably could put them over the top in a game that could be very close and high scoring. A field goal to win it easily. Oklahoma versus West Virginia. Oklahoma is pretty highly ranked. I mean, West Virginia isn't. With Oklahoma being, at number 13 or 12, depending on which poll, I don't see them having too much trouble with West Virginia, but West Virginia was a top 10 team earlier this season, and they've lost 4 straight. They've got Geno Smith, who was supposed to lock up the Heisman. I see all this potential that is not being used, and I just feel like if you just put that, potential in and frustration together, I can totally see them knocking off this Sooner team, which would be also very interesting for Notre Dame's computer ranking if this team lost if Oklahoma had another loss, because the more losses Oklahoma has, and the more losses Stanford has, and the more losses USC is going to have, because they're gonna lose to UCLA, it kind of hurts Notre Dame more, putting them farther out from the rest of the pack. My final game, this is the big one, Oregon-Stanford. Oregon is actually a 21.5-point favorite. I find this amazing, seeing against USC, they were like a 4-point favorite. It's insane. Like, Stanford is not that good, actually. They lost to Washington. Did anybody else see what Oregon did to Washington? Because I did. It was like 50-0 at half or something. So I do not see Oregon having too much trouble with Stanford. You never know, but Stanford's got quarterback issues. And my last thing, I'm going into my Heisman section. First, I want to rant about something. I really hate how Heisman sway from week to week. Johnny Manziel was not even in most Heismanology things. He's now number 2 in most of them, behind Colin Klein. Geno Smith had it locked up, and now, poof, he's not even in the race. I hate how that works. I think it should be the best player through the whole season, not just the last 4 games of the season. Saying this, I think it's probably going to come down to Manziel of A&M, Barner of Oregon, and Klein of Kansas State. That's really what it has to come down to. I don't see any other way. I like Barner, but he has to have a big game in his next 3 games against Stanford, who has a great defense, Oregon State, and possibly a Pac-12 championship game. If he doesn't average more than like 200 yards a game, or like a 150 per game, he's probably out of the race. Colin Klein, just somebody hit him or something. I don't see how he hasn't been knocked out with all that scrambling and stuff. He runs for a lot of yards and scores a lot of touchdowns, which really bugs me. I don't know, running quarterbacks. I mean, I love them. I love playing them in video games, but I don't see how they don't get injured more, because they get slammed a lot. Yeah, just an opinion. Johnny Manziel and Colin Klein. I actually like Manziel over Klein when you look at the stats. When you look at total touchdowns. When you look at who they've played. I like Manziel over Klein, but I like Manziel 4 weeks ago when everybody else said he was just a freshman. Now he's the super freshman. Isn't that interesting? Well, on that note, I think it is time for me to end my show. Thank you for listening to College Football on Air. I will see you next time.